Howdy folks, welcome back to War Thunder with the mighty Jingles. Today, we're looking at the B-17. All three variants of the B-17 available in War Thunder. You've got this one at rank 14, the B-17G. And then at rank 13 you've got two B-17s, the E and the E Late, which are functionally the same aircraft. In fact, all three versions of the aircraft are pretty much the same. The only real differences between the E models and the G is that the E's both go faster and have a higher service ceiling than the G. The G has an extra machine gun, the chin turret here. Well, it's technically two extra machine guns. And that's pretty much it. Now, the funny old thing about the B-17, every model built up to the B-17D was, well, these were very, very heavily armed and very rugged aircraft. And let's have a look. Right, you've got two machine guns here, you've got a machine gun there, you've got a machine gun there, you've got two machine guns here, you've got a machine gun there, you've got a machine gun here, you've got a machine gun here, and these are all 50 caliber machine guns. You've got two machine guns there. And if this was the B-17D, that's all you had. It didn't have a tail gun. But, I mean, who's ever going to think of attacking a bomber from behind? It's kind of bizarre that this thing was just bristling with guns, and they didn't give it a tail gun. So, you know, that's not a problem you're ever going to suffer in War Thunder, because from the B-17E on, they realised that, you know, these things seem to be getting shot down from behind a lot. Well, we never saw that one coming. We'd better put a tail gun on it. So all the models of B-17s in War Thunder come with tail guns. You'll be very pleased to hear. And it has to be said that there's, I mean, this thing is such an icon. Instantly recognisable. In fact, if I was to show you a picture of a Tiger tank and a B-17 Flying Fortress, and you were unable to identify either of those vehicles, you'd have to hand in your man card and go and collect a handbag straight away, because you're just not a man. Right? Those are the rules. It's part of the test that you have to pass to be acknowledged as a man, be able to recognise a B-17 and a Tiger tank. I don't make the rules, I just work here. So what they're like in War Thunder, well, they're fun to fly. I definitely have had fun flying the B-17. Are they as legendarily tough in the game as they were in real life? Well, I don't know. It's not something that's easy to quantify, because flying a dozen games in each just isn't enough to draw a conclusion. It's a statistically insignificant number of flights. You'd have to fly 100 games in each one, and then 100 games in something else like an Avro Lancaster, to be able to draw any statistical conclusions. So all I can go on is how they feel, and they don't feel any tougher than other bombers of a comparable level. They're certainly better armed. I mean, the Avro Lancaster it's just ridiculously poorly armed. It's only got 3 machine gun turrets. There's one at the nose, one on top, around about there, and a quadruple machine gun turret at the back. But the Lancaster only had 7.62mm guns, 30 calibers. The B-17 had, 15 times as many guns. Yes, I'm exaggerating, and they were all 50 cals. So this thing certainly is capable of looking after itself, and I think that feels like the only real difference between the B-17s and comparable bombers of other nations of similar levels. It's not so much that they can take more of a beating, it's just that they can dish it out. They're dangerous aircraft to approach. So let's have a look at how they fly, some of the games I've played in them. We'll talk a little bit about the history, the design and development of the B-17 Flying Fortress. So, in an effort to at least try and obtain some sort of idea of how much of a kicking the B-17 can take, I set up a custom mission with a flight of 4 B-17s, just trying to make it from point A to point B while getting jumped on by 18 Mitsubishi Zeros. Now, of course, these are not player-controlled Zeros, so they're never going to be as good as aircraft flown by real pilots. But still, there's 18 of the buggers. So we'll just let this thing play through and see how the B-17 does, see how much damage it can soak up. And equally importantly, how many of these Zeros they can shoot down. The B-17 was entered into combat trials in 1935 as a replacement for the US Army Air Force's Martin B-10 bomber. Now, it's a mark of just how fast bomber design was evolving in the 30s, because the Martin B-10 had only been introduced into service in 1933, and at the time it was introduced it was considered to be the most advanced bomber in the world. It was certainly faster, more than half again as fast as any other biplane bomber, and it was faster than any contemporary fighter. 2 short years later it was already obsolete, and made obsolete by aircraft like this, the B-17. So in 1935 the Army Air Corps invited trials from the Boeing Corporation, the Martin Corporation and the Douglas Corporation. The 3 aircraft went head to head. The Boeing Corporation's entry was obviously the B-17. It was nicknamed the Flying Fortress by a news reporter who called it, basically when he saw this thing rolling out on the tarmac bristling with guns, he said, "My God, that thing's a flying fortress." Boeing immediately saw the public relations potential of the name and trademarked it instantly, and hence the name Flying Fortress was born. The Flying Fortress did incredibly well in the trials. It outperformed all of its competitors and completely exceeded the design specifications called for by the US Army Air Force. It didn't exactly go without a hitch, however. The ground crew on one of the test flights forgot to, I don't know the name of the equipment, but basically it's when the aircraft's on the ground, there are safety devices attached to all of the control surfaces, you know, the flaps, the rudder, the ailerons, that lock them in place. And it took off for a test flight with these devices still attached. And so that immediately after takeoff, while it was unable to control the aircraft, and it crashed, killing the pilot and at least one other of the test crew. Unfortunately, what this meant was that the B-17 couldn't complete the trial. They only had the one prototype. And so legally they had to withdraw, despite the fact that they were kicking the arse of the competition. They legally had to withdraw from the trials. But obviously the Army didn't like that idea, so through a legal loophole they ordered a whole bunch of B-17s for testing and evaluation purposes, and basically just sidestepped the rules. You know, they knew a good aircraft when they saw one. Check this out. Are any of those Zeros left? Look at that. Full of holes, one engine dead, multiple 20mm cannon hits, still flying. Let's see how it does against, you know, people who actually know how to shoot. People flying Russians. Yak-9Ts, you know. Aircraft that are capable of blowing anybody else out of the sky by just looking at them. MiGs, things like that. A slightly tougher playing environment. What actually made the B-17 so successful as a high-altitude bomber? Because you have to realise that this was a bygone age, and high-altitude bombers were not capable of precise bombing of ground targets miles below them. The B-17, probably more than any other bomber, was. And that was pretty much because of a top-secret device called the Norden Bombsight. Basically, this was a very primitive computer. And what would happen was, once the pilot had the aircraft trimmed, levelled off, and in level flight on the insertion point to the target, he would hands off the controls, the Norden Bombsight would be activated, and the bombardier was actually the guy steering the aircraft. Although not directly, he would basically be aiming the aircraft at the target zone and the aircraft would be flying in response to the input made on the Norden Bombsight. It was very precise by the standards of the 1940s. Over half, it's going to sound ridiculous by today's standards, the B-17 was actually capable of landing half of its bombs in the target area, right? Not on the target, in the target area. That sounds absolutely ridiculous by today's standards, but in the mid-1940s that was a phenomenal success rate. Is that reflected in the game? Well, again, this is one of those things that you can't tell from playing half a dozen to a dozen missions. But, well, I just dropped a stick of 8 bombs on this carrier, and every single one of them hit. Statistically insignificant again. You'd have to fly hundreds, well, at least 100 bombing missions, and you know, see how many times you hit what you're dropping your bombs on. But it does seem, and again, I can only give you a feeling, because I certainly can't prove it with numbers, but it does feel as if large bombs dropped from the B-17 seem to be more accurate than when I'm doing the same kind of thing in an Avro Lancaster, for example. Actually, here's a few facts and figures about the Norden Bombsight. It's top secret. The Americans didn't even share it with the British. The British wanted it. They were developing their own automatic bombsight. I can't remember what it was called. The SABS, I think it was. Stabilised Automatic Bombsight. That was it, yeah. The British version didn't have the autopilot linkage, so unless you were flying in completely clear and dead still air, it was never going to be as accurate as the American bombsight. But again, when we're talking about accuracy, this is all relative. The USAAF believed that the B-17 had a 1.2% chance of hitting a 100-foot target from 20,000 feet. So that meant you had to use 220 bombers to ensure a target's destruction. Well, that wasn't the problem. They certainly had the bombers. But even this revolutionary bombsight wasn't without its problems. It's quite funny when you think about it. It sounds quite obvious when you think about it, but if you've got a formation of 220 bombers and the bombardiers of all of these aircraft... Oh, I'm going in here. And I'm going in hard and fast. Ow, that's going to hurt. Yeah, don't worry about it. I've got plenty more B-17s where that one came from. But anyway, problems with the Norden Bombsight. Well, it wasn't so much that there was a problem with the bombsight. There was a problem with 220 aircraft all relying on a bombardier who isn't looking where the plane's going. He's staring through a bombsight at a ground target, 6 miles below him. He's not watching where the aircraft's going. And so if you've got 220 aircraft all flying in formation and they're all individually being guided to the target by a bombardier who's not watching where the aircraft's flying, what's going to happen? Instead of maintaining that flying formation, every single aircraft is going to start to drift towards the same point, and they're all going to start colliding with each other. So they realised that this was actually probably a very bad idea, and instead they decided that only the lead aircraft in each formation would actually be using his bombsight, and everybody else would be maintaining formation on the lead bomber. Of course, that meant that only the lead aircraft was going to be moderately accurate, and everybody else was just going to be bombing an area around where the lead aircraft was dropping his bombs. Now, while this was still more effective than what anybody else could do, it wasn't precision high-altitude bombing. And when Jimmy Doolittle took over the 8th Air Force, he scrapped all attempts at trying to do high-altitude precision bombing, and instead they just went for the standard mass area saturation bombing raids that basically became the distinctive feature of Bomber Command's operations over Germany all the way to the end of the war. So things pretty much settled down to daylight raids being conducted by the 8th Air Force and the night bombing raids being conducted by Royal Air Force Bomber Command. But as the scale and intensity of the air raids rose, the German response got more and more effective. Let's just see if we can kill this bloody carrier. How many bombs have we dropped on this thing? I've lost track. 15, from the B-17G. Here comes another 8 from my next B-17E. We've got to kill this thing. Hit, 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 hit. Every single... There we go. Got him. I think every single bomb I've dropped has hit that carrier, which is good stuff. And we're taking a kicking, but we're not down yet. There was some fairly stiff opposition. I mean, look at this. I've got jets coming up to get me, Yak 9Ts, you name it. But the gunners are giving as good as they get. Come on, boys. Keep me in the air. Just a little longer. I've got 4 bombs left. Oh, look at that. Focke-Wulf 190s, LA5s, Yak 9Ts. Yeah, I'm not going to survive this. There's a BF 109 back there as well. Can I at least kill the Focke-Wulf? I've got him! And I'm not down. I shot down a Focke-Wulf D13. Well, good stuff. This thing can certainly look after itself. Which brings us on to the next topic. Because the B-17 was not really capable of looking after itself as the German tactics evolved to deal with Mast bomber raids. You see, here's the thing. The B-17s were exceptionally well armed, no question about it. Did that guy try to ram me? Or did he try to avoid ramming me? I'm going to choose to believe that he tried to avoid ramming it, and we got another kill. Look at this. On fire, leaking fuel, leaking oil, 1 engine shot down, control shot out, still flying, still got bombs, still shooting down attackers. You've got to love this aircraft. What was I talking about? I keep getting sidetracked. Oh, of course. Mast bomber raids and the Luftwaffe's tactics for repelling them. The basic idea was that you had to fly these aircraft in... Oh my god, I just scored an assist. This plane's wrecked though. But anyway, yes, you had to fly these aircraft in box formation to maximise the supportive firepower. So, you know, multiple different B-17s could be defending themselves against the same fighter. Oh, I'm not going to survive this. Anyway. But in order to do that, basically the pilot was just flying the plane straight level. Oh, and I'm down. Never mind. And that was great. As long as you trusted your gunners, and all you had to worry about was enemy aircraft. But that made you an easy target for flak, and the Germans had lots and lots and lots of 20mm, 88mm, you name it, flak guns. So that was a problem. And US Army Air Force's losses were getting up to 25%. I mean, that's just completely unsustainable. Until the introduction, well, primarily of this thing. Long-range escort fighters. And when you think about long-range escort fighters, the P-51 Mustang is pretty much what everybody's thinking of. And it was the introduction of this thing that basically stabilised the loss rate and allowed the US Army Air Force to continue successfully flying its daylight bombing missions. But no, we're not showing you any any P-51 gameplay in today's video. That's going to come at a later date. But there we go. That's not a bad result. But it does kind of showcase a problem with bombers on certain maps that I've been harping on about forever. Flying B-17s, we were one of the few aircraft on our team who were capable of winning the game by killing the enemy carriers quickly and relatively quickly and efficiently. And that's all we did. We got 2 air kills, 1 assist, shooting down fighters that were attacking us, and we nailed one of those carriers. And it cost me 2 B-17s to do it. And we walked away with 30,000 credits. That's not going to cover our repairs. So, again, and this is not a universal problem, but playing a bomber on a map like Port, if you do what you're supposed to do in order to win the game, you just don't get rewarded adequately for it. And all the fighters flying around farming the easy ground kills walk away with a lot more money and a lot more XP than you do by doing what you need to do to win the game because you're flying a B-17. So you've got the choice. You can either win and not be rewarded adequately for it, or lose but farm all the easy kill ground targets and get a buttload of credits. And that just seems wrong. It's not a problem with the B-17, it's just a problem with the way bombing works on certain maps. Of course, another problem that you have in, well, it's not limited to just the B-17, you can have it in any aircraft, but in particular when you've got a large, heavily armed, tough bomber like this aircraft. One problem that you are going to come across when playing War Thunder, and it's probably the single biggest complaint I have about this game, is that sometimes the easiest way to take you out is by a no-skill douchebag loser doing something like that. When your aircraft's as expensive to repair as the B-17, it's particularly annoying, but it's not just limited to the B-17, of course. No, it can happen when you're flying any aircraft, and these clips that you're looking at are actually all from the same bloody game. So this was a lot of fun. But, while depressing, not strictly relevant to the subject of this video, the B-17. So, here's another game I played. This is on... Actually, they renamed this. I don't even know what this map was originally called. Alpine Meadows or something. No, I don't know. It's called Gorge now, and here we are. And that's some nasty opposition. Is it just me, or is this map a lot more snowy and white than it used to be? It just looks different. Anyway, doesn't matter. This was actually a really unusual game. For two reasons. We weren't flying particularly high-tier aircraft. I mean, these B-17s are only rank 13. And yet, the matchmaker couldn't find a full team on each side. So there were actually 2 or 3 AI-controlled aircraft on each team. And you see all these pea-shooters flying around, they're actually flown by the AI. And this was quite comical, actually. Almost, I think, everybody on our team, bar one person, picked a bomber as the first aircraft to fly. And everybody on the enemy team, bar one person, picked a fighter as the first aircraft to fly. And almost all of them went for me first. So you're going to see 2 extremes here. I mean, I'm taking hits already. I've just managed to drop my first bomb load. And there are at least 4 fighters on me. So I'm taking a savage kicking, but I'm not down yet. And there we go. But I do kill one of them. So, yeah. I mean, a minimum of 4 fighters battering the crap out of me. That's what it took to put the B-17 down. And I still killed one of them and damaged 2 or 3 of the others. So, there's that. I immediately jumped into my next B-17. A little bit more, paying a little more attention to what's going on around me now, looking at that and thinking, oh, you've got to be kidding. Will somebody please jump into a fighter? I don't want this to happen again. But, you know, I've made my choice now. Too late, I've realised what's going on. I'm committed. I'm already flying the B-17, so let's go for some more ground targets. Now, what you just saw was the B-17 taking a savage beating from 4 different fighters, at least 4 different fighters, and killing one of them, damaging some others before going, before inevitably going down. And then just a few minutes later, almost the exact opposite situation occurs. And this is what I love about War Thunder, because it doesn't matter if you're flying a B-17 Flying Fortress. It doesn't matter if you're flying, doesn't matter what you're flying. And it's one of the greatest strengths, I think, of this game. Despite all the things about the game that wind me up, I still keep coming back to it because anybody can kill anybody. You just saw me taking a massive battering, an intense shoeing from 4 different fighters, killing one of them and eventually going down. Now, there's me versus a lone BF-109 for. And that's what I love about War Thunder. Anybody can kill anybody. Doesn't matter how tough you are. All you have to do is either get lucky or be accurate. And I'm already dead. I mean, this guy is staying on me, but my elevators are shot. I cannot pull out of this dive. He doesn't need to waste any more ammo on me. I'm going down. And that's what I love about War Thunder. It doesn't matter what you're flying. You cannot afford to get cocky. Anybody can kill you. You know, unless you're flying a Yak 9T, obviously. Now, a couple of points I want to take away from that mission in particular. And it's to do with the amount of money earned. And I have definitely been on record in the past and quite vocal in my complaints about how balked the economy of the game appeared to be after patch 1.29. Well, not appeared to be, it was. Now, I have not seen this in writing anywhere, and I've looked, but people that I trust have said, yep, definitely seen it in an official announcement. I mean, I've been checking the patch notes on the official forum every time there's a mini patch and a bug fix goes into the launcher, and I have not seen this written down, but people that I trust swear they have seen it, and it appears to be that sometime after patch 1.29 rolled out, in order to address the concerns of the community, you're now getting rewarded for doing your job when you fly a mission. Fighters are getting a credit multiplier for air kills. Bombers and ground attack aircraft are getting a credit multiplier for ground target kills, and that does certainly seem to be the case, just looking at the numbers. I mean, I flew 2 B-17s in that mission, and I only killed 11 ground targets. Basically because I was getting jumped on by every fighter going. And then one very good, or lucky, BF-109F. So 2 B-17s flown, only killed 11 ground targets, earned 54,000 credits. So that tells me somebody's been paying attention to the complaints of the community. Now, yes, I am running a premium account. I don't have a problem with paying to play a game I enjoy. Your mileage may differ. I'm prepared to continue supporting the game by paying for a premium account. Yes, aircraft do still cost far more than they did prior to patch 1.29. But I think if we're going to be honest with ourselves, we would admit that it was far too easy to stockpile massive amounts of cash. There was no challenge in going up the tech trees. If you look at a game like World of Tanks, a new tier 10 tank will cost you over 6 million credits. And that takes effort to earn that kind of money. And nobody really has a problem with that in World of Tanks. I think part of the reaction that we're seeing here in War Thunder is that it was no challenge whatsoever to earn money prior to 1.29. After 1.29, they went too far in the other direction, and it was almost impossible to earn enough cash to buy the next tier of aircraft. But you shouldn't necessarily be able to immediately purchase the next tier of aircraft when you unlock them. There should be some element of grind in it to keep you playing the existing aircraft. And I think we're starting to see some sort of equilibrium. And I don't want to make this video all about the economic system in War Thunder. It's supposed to be a B-17 review. But plainly looking at the results of that, I didn't do that well in the B-17. It cost me 2 B-17s and I only killed 11 ground targets, but with a premium account I walked away from there in profit. 54,000 credits is enough to repair both B-17s and still put some money in the bank ready to purchase the next tier of aircraft. So it's encouraging, and I definitely think steps in the right direction. I don't think they're fully there yet. I still do believe that new aircraft still cost too much, but things are moving in the right direction, definitely, and I'm very happy to see that. So, B-17 Flying Fortress as modelled in War Thunder, all 3 variants of it. Yeah, I like this aircraft. I enjoy flying this aircraft. It seems to be able to take the kind of kicking that you would expect a B-17 to be able to take. But it's not so much about the damage it can absorb, it's about the damage this thing can put out. And it is very, very rare that I'm flying one of these things and I get it shot down, and I don't take at least one of them with me. And I think that's really the way it should be. This was an incredibly well-armed aircraft. And I think they've done a really good job of implementing it in War Thunder. I'm one rank away from getting my own B-17s in the US Air Force line. Obviously, this is a press account. But my own account, I'm nearly there, and I'm really looking forward to getting them. Speaking of the press account, I've given up trying to obscure the name. There's 55,000 of you amateur internet detectives out there, and I'm guaranteed to miss something. And hundreds of you are guaranteed to spot it, and gleefully tell me about it in the comments, or send me multiple PMs saying, oh, by the way, you missed one. Yeah, I know. So all I'm doing now is every time I put the video up, I've already changed the name of the account, so you won't see Dr. Weevil flying around in War Thunder anymore. The name has already been changed to protect the innocent. So that's the B-17 Flying Fortress. I certainly hope you enjoyed the review. I've definitely had fun flying the thing, and I hope you've been entertained by my efforts to not suck in it. As always, folks, watch your six, and I'll catch you next time.